In next 10 minutes, what I'm going to show you is some of the experts from, we as a firm, as PWC, we release a media and entertainment global outlook for next 5 years. And we do it as a rolling forecast year after year, every year. We just released our 20th global outlook yesterday in US and today in India and some other parts of the world. So it is purely just a coincidence that this actually is the first platform, as a public platform, where we are going to show some of the numbers from a global outlook on this year. So we heard almost everybody talk about, personalization. Almost everybody was talking about the changing consumer behavior, the changing technology landscape, and other things. OTT, this chart is one of my favorite. It's a very different way of saying what really OTT has to be really successful, and not just OTT. Even for that reason, a lot of other media players in the ecosystem is to move towards TV of me. Wherever I go, whatever I do, I should be able to watch the TV of me is a phrase that we coined actually about 4 years back, and we have been using this phrase TV of me, quite repeatedly after that. So, how does we work towards the TV of me concept? Now, some of the global trends, if you see, these are all global trends from the PWC Outlook report released today in India, just about 3 hours back, and globally, yesterday. So, mobile internet advertising will outweigh the wired equivalent for the first time. Now, some of these are very different in Indian context. So, point 3, for example, the smartphone data consumption will overtake that of fixed broadband in 2020 globally. In India, we already live in a very different world. In India, our fixed broadband subscriber base itself is less than 20 million as compared to multiple times over in mobile. So some of these you will have to see it as a where India has already leapfrogged against the global, but these are by and large the global indicators that we are seeing. If more than 50% of budgets will move to digital, again it becomes a very important and relevant aspect for OTT industry. And China will actually exceed US for the first time over the next 5 years in terms of absolute value in the size of media and entertainment. This is not just OTT, but what I am talking about here is the holistic overall size of the media and entertainment industry in those countries. They will actually surpass that. And Asia Pacific will overtake North America as the largest OTT region by 2021. And India will actually become the 8th largest OTT player worldwide. These are India cut from the outlook. Over next 5 years, the growth horizon over next 5 years, OTT is among the fastest growing segment for us at approximately 22% CAGR over 5 years. 22% CAGR over 5 years. Of course, the base is small, so the term won't mean so much sometimes. Virtual reality, there are a lot of ifs and buts around that in terms of the use cases and actual adoption of virtual reality in the real world, but that is again going fast. Interestingly, esports, if you get some time, look at how the esports growth has happened over the last 3 years. And esports is going to grow phenomenally at a much faster pace in times to come going forward. So long story short, the message is, and of course there are some trends in India which will clearly defy the global trends. While globally we are saying newspaper and consumer magazines will go down negative 2.3% over the next 5 years worldwide. India will still see a growth of 3%, in the same time span. And we being and market, whatever be the OTT penetration in India, whatever be the consumer behavior shift that happens in India, traditional TV will continue to grow. I think that's pretty much a given parameter. Traditional TV home video is going to grow at 12% CAGR over the next 5 years, and there are a lot of reasons behind that, and I'm sure everybody knows the reasons around that. In terms of segment revenue, if we talk of OTT in particular, we are talking of, in India case, we are talking of the revenues growing from, I think I would have loved to put some of these to the people on the panel, previous one. from 0.6, almost $537 million, in the previous year, to roughly about $1.7 billion of subscription revenue in the OTT business by 2023. So that's a number which is extremely important number for people in this space in OTT environment, that we as a country, India as a country, we are talking of roughly about 12,000 crores of subscription revenue coming out of OTT by 2023. That's a very, very important aspect. And of course, globally, India will continue to grow, but they will of course be a smaller in terms of size of industry when compared to US and other. From a overall OTT perspective, we as a country and also pretty much in line with the global trends, we will continue to be largely a subscription VOD. There is a degree of, we always talk about SVOD and AVOD. There is a degree of, within that there is a concept of TVOD, which is a transactional, VOD, like for example iTunes and others, where you don't really take a subscription, but you pay, per sachet or a per piece or a per track or something. So the TVOD is something that we monitor, we track it globally as a very, very separate indicator. So between SVOD and TVOD, it's largely going to be a 80+%, between 80 to 90% as a subscription VOD for us. One more interesting outlook from our report, which is basically if we club together the video as a segment of entertainment and media, and within video, if we talk about the video consumption through TV, the video consumption through OTT, and video consumption through cinema. What we have done, we have put together the OTT, cinema, and TV video business together, and then seeing how do we as a country are going to grow over the next 5 years, and how do we compare against the global trends. From 1% of the overall holistic video consumption to growing to 8% in next 5 years in India as OTT, which compares against US, for example, at 20%. So US is going to forecast 20% of total video consumption coming through OTT by 2023, and against that we are talking of 8% in India. Having said that, there is a fair amount of growth which I talked about earlier in all these parameters. OTT at 22%, TV at 12%, cinema will still continue growing at 9% over the next 5-year horizon. So it's good times. Now these are statistics. Some people in the room would love statistics. Some people might not love. Personally, I don't love statistics. I'm not a firm believer of numbers. Because given the fact is that the market is so large, it is growing even larger. Let's get down and do the work. So whether it is 12% or 13%, 14% doesn't make much of a difference beyond a point. But these are good indicators. This really tells us that okay, yes, there is a 12,000 crores of money in OTT business as subscription. Now what do we do about it? Now it's not that money is not lying there just like that. You can run all Balaji, or you can run Heroes, or let's say Z5 or even Hotstar or Netflix or Amazon in India, by not doing a few things which the industries, which we as consumers, or which the environment is demanding for them to do now. So what is it? The point is, what is it that they need to do to really get to the TV of me and fight for the consumer attention? One of the things which I am very passionate about when I talk about either media or in the CMO advisories and various things, that today we live in a world where we have the maximum possible ways of reaching out to a consumer. You can actually reach out to a consumer from a brand perspective from 100 different touch points. It was never like that in the past, but that has its own share of problem. While you have maximum possible channels of engagement available, it is equally more difficult today to get the attention of that. So the focus needs to go that, how do we really build that attention? And for that, what needs to be done is, we got to figure out how do we, if I'm an OTT player, how do I move from video for everyone to really video of me? And it is not a 0-1 It is not a 0-1 game that I do something and I jump over there. It's a maturity curve. It's a process. It's a journey. Nobody has mastered the art. The maximum money that has been put into, let's say, recommendation engine or personalization engine, trying to know more and more about consumers, the maximum amount of money and research has been put by Netflix. But still, I myself personally end up spending, I don't know how much time trying to figure out what do I watch next. I don't know how many of you spend considerable amount of time to figure out ab kya dekhu. Quite a few, right? And this is despite the fact that they have an award-winning recommendation engine. So which means the point I'm trying to make is that there is no end goal over there. It's a maturity curve. You got to keep working at it. I have had conversations with a lot of players in India, and they say that we have invested money, we have put these analytics engine, we have got these algorithms, modeling done, technology is in place, we are able to know our consumer better. And trust me that you haven't even scratched the surface. There is a lot more that needs to be done. So this is one key that we got to really work on. And to do that and to be able to meet even some of the consumer wish list which is there today. If I pick, randomly, like accessibility is more about, infrastructure driven and the speed of the internet and the connectivity. So that is, that's given, pretty much given now. Affordability. How, we heard a little bit about experiments being done on price points and the revenue models. But affordability is very important. Who would have thought when Netflix came to India that they will actually, for the first time globally, think of coming out with a cheaper pricing option, because somebody in Netflix would have realized that we can't let go a market as big as India and stick to our price points and be happy with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million subscribers. Of course, they won't be. So affordability is extremely important. If I pick one randomly, something more, discoverability we just spoke about. How much time all of us keep spending time on surfing the content. Personalization we spoke about. Participation. I always say that today there is a very thin line difference between being an audience and an actor. There is a very thin line difference between being a spectator and a player. If I'm watching a game of golf or watching a game of cricket, I might want to try a hand myself. If I'm watching content, I might want to see how can I also play a role over there, or at least control something. So immersive content and immersive experience and that participation is going to grow more and more in India rather than anywhere else, because we are a young country. The people sitting here in this room, even if I take the average, the median age of this room, we still won't be representing the true young growing population of India. 850 million people under age of 35. And if you take it further down to under 17, under 15, we have a huge set of people. So they are more and more immersive. They know, how it really works. So even if you have to address some of these consumer wish list today, and more than a wish list, I would rather call it as a very, very demanding behavior today. There are a host of enabling technologies, and again, it's not just that I pick one and I'm done with that. One will have to really sit down, experiment with it, and play more and more. So we heard Divya talking about, at Old Balaji, we use artificial intelligence. I know they do use. I don't know, she's around, left. She left, yes. I know they use. And I know everybody uses that. And AI is something which I think everybody does it today. You go and ask anybody, any company in India, small, big, medium, any industry, they will say, yeah, we are using AI. It's a buzzword. It's all right, and it's true also in a way. But within that, have we explored the art of possible? How do I really make the best use of that? That's where it really matters. And likewise, there are so many technologies which will come into play. Blockchain is going to disrupt a lot of things on a lot of problems that we have spoken about, earlier. So from there, some of the things which, again, which we have spoken about in our Outlook. So when we release the Outlook report, there are two parts of it. One is the numbers, statistics, which I shared with you in the earlier charts. And second is the perspective. The perspective is that what is the perspective of industry over the next 5 years horizon, and what are the challenges, and what the companies should be doing about it. So some of the challenges that which are going to grow more and more is cyber security and piracy. Unfortunately, we still do not hear many people talk about security and piracy in the OTT or the digital events that we carry out here. This is growing into a bigger and bigger issue, and it is a much bigger issue, at least for people sitting in New Delhi in the in the government offices and globally, the regulators. So this is now that on one side you are investing into knowing consumer better, which means what do I shop, what do I watch, where do I go. If all that is being recorded, if all that is being known, I don't know how many of you have ever, how many of you know or would have ever seen. Okay, let me ask, how many of you have Google Maps on your phone? Almost all. How many of you keep location forever on, you don't switch it off? It's perpetually on your phone, for example. Location is, a lot of people switch off location? No, I would not. You do? Okay, so for most of the people, the location is by default on these days, and Google Maps is on. Go to your maps and go to your timelines. It will tell you day by day with the entire history that आप कितने बजे कहाँ गए. Every day. So when I first saw it, a few months back, and I was aghast. I said, I'm being literally tracked minute by minute. If I stop by at a friend's house for a cup of coffee, वो भी record हो गया उसमें. Everything is there, right? So if so much of data is being read, the data is being stored and made sense of course there are going to be issues on privacy and regulation. So OTT players need to do a lot more things around how do we protect that data? How do we build that element of trust with the consumer that, okay, if they know so much about me, nothing is going to happen to me. My data is still safe. That is very, very important. Infrastructure we spoke about. Fragmentation. Now, we heard in the previous panel also, 30 sessions, etc. Now, there is again, within that 30 players which are out there in the market, one size doesn't fit all. Whom are we servicing and how is a very, very important aspect in the whole debate. Yeah, so we heard about some of these. Now, this is something that we spoke about in our previous, and we keep talking about it as a concept. Convergence 3.0, I'll try and simplify it for you. Typically when we talk about convergence, we talk about a technology-based convergence. What we are speaking here is a convergence of almost everything, of business models. So there are mega players today who have a dominated presence in e-commerce. For example, if you talk of Amazon as an example, they are into commerce. They have a dominating play in content, in media, in entertainment, with the Prime. And their domination is, they're into cloud business from an enterprise perspective. Now they are getting everywhere. So likewise, there is between, who would have thought, if I say, let's say Netflix. Netflix was only a DVD rental company when it started. Apple, what was Apple? Just a computer manufacturer in a way. You talk of Disney. Disney was, of course, a content creator or a theme park, or a content creator when they started before that. Now, you pick any of them, or Amazon. Pick any of them, all of them are in some form and shape, creator, producer, distributor of content. In a different form and shape. But they all do this piece now. So there is a different kind of convergence which has happened out in the market over there. Mobile consumer, we already spoke about, in the previous charts. Need for new source of revenue. Now, historically, they have had a share of revenue which comes from, for example, it was very easy for us to say that I'm an OTT player and this is one pricing model and you subscribe to it and get the content. Now that one share of revenue is not going to be good enough. So we heard a lot of people in the previous panel talk about partnerships. Why? Because you're realizing that you need to have expanded source of revenue. Within that partnerships, then you do inbound partnership also. On your own platform, you get, let's say for example, Hotstar has got Hook, or for that reason, there are inbound, outbound, though all kind of partnerships happening now, in this space. Reason being, you need to find out new source of growth. Personalization, we have already spoken a lot about. I think I'll end with this last slide with three key messaging here, and we keep talking about original content. I think it is more than original content. It is the goodness of content that has to be there. And if you have original content, then of course it gives you that edge, that advantage over a lot of other people out in the market. That content could be in any form. The growth of Hotstar is on back of cricket rights, because their parent Star TV, or let's say within Star TV, Uday, they had the vision, they had the aggression, they had the strength to go for it, and they bid for that. And on the back of those rights, Hotstar has grown phenomenally. Having tasted that success on the back of sports, then they now diversify into original content. Hostages, is original content in a way, being on Hotstar. The price has to be right. Now, we already spoke about it in the previous few charts, how the price modeling is happening and how Netflix is doing a lot of experimentation around that. And the interactive. I was talking a few minutes back why there is a thin line difference between being a spectator or a player or being an audience and an actor. Everybody wants to give a hand, give it a try while watching content. So it's happening. There is a show, for example, Bandersnatch. How many of you have heard about Bandersnatch as a show? Yeah, quite a few. I'm actually very pleasantly surprised, because I thought, maybe much lesser. You in a way, you define your own story. There's so many aspects, so many points where it asks you, if it were you, what will you do? And you pick a choice, by your choice, and the story changes after that, for example, or a few things change. Now that's how, that's one degree of participation in content. If I am a happy person, or if I am a sadistic person, if I am a, let's say, could be any kind of example. There could be those kind of options in the story building and participation with the audience. So, interactivity will keep on growing. We got to keep working on the pricing. There is no stoppage to that. And we should look at original content, the good content. These are the essential elements for success in OTT. And the last point, which I have not covered in this, is something that I started with, the TV of me. In this business, in this era, or particularly in OTT business or media as a whole also, we cannot survive by looking at the audience of billions. We have to survive by addressing billions of individuals. That's how we kind of put it. Every one of us. It's no more about a 40 plus, male 40 plus metro tier 1 town. That won't work anymore. They got to know Raman Kalra exactly. They got to know, anybody sitting in this room by that kind of detailed specification. On that note, and on the happy note that we forecast OTT to be a 12,000 crore subscription-driven revenue in next 5 years. There's a lot to do for all of us. Let's go for it. Make it bigger than any other market. Thank you.